Meat City, baby.
Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video, and today we're once again covering the Nightsisters in the Sith Triumvirate Raid. This is once again Tier 6, so this is the last non-heroic tier of the raid, and this is probably, hopefully, my last video for the non-heroic Sith raid. We're about to try out heroic for the first time coming up, so whether it goes well or whether it goes poorly, I will try to put together some content for that, highlighting the run, highlighting my teams, how we approach it as a guild, who does what to try and get through this for the first time, and then also the teams that I use and their success or lack thereof, but hopefully not, hopefully it's success in heroic Sith raid for the first time. What you're looking at here is, again, my Nightsisters team. They're pretty well under-geared for the Sith raid. And the only difference between this and my previous video, the previous run with Nightsisters in Phase 4, is I added the second Zeta to Asajj. You need her first Zeta on her leadership. That is pretty much a non-starter. You have to have that for the team to work. That's what generates the turn meter manipulation. That's what gets the damage numbers out of this team. The second one really ramps up Asajj's damage. It basically allows her to stack offense and damage the more times characters die throughout the fight. So by the end of the fight, she can be hitting for really big damage numbers like 50k on a basic. At the beginning of the fight, you won't really see that, but it ramps up to be getting those big hits in towards the end of the raid. So other than that, I might have added one gear level to one character. Maybe Mother or old Daka might be up one more gear level. Basically, Asajj is the damage dealer. She carries the team. She is gear 12. No extra gear 12 pieces. And then Daka is pretty high gear level. I think she's at 10. Acolyte, I believe, is also at 10. Zombie is crazy low at like 4. And Mother Talzin, I think, is at 7. So no crazy gear on them. I just moved my arena mods from my arena team over to them in a way that I tried to make sense, but still keeping them together, so I did spend an hour undoing mods. Hashtag mod management, please. So unoptimized team, but I was able to increase my score pretty dramatically, and the point of the video today is to just highlight some of those differences. The first video is an introductory, basic level on how to run Nightsisters in Phase 4 of the Sith Raid, and this is an intermediate to slightly advanced course, looking at some of the characters that you can use and some tips on how to increase your damage, other than just giving them extra skills and ramping up their gear. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at Mother Talzin, and her big thing that she can do is inflict plague. And if you can get plague to stick throughout the fight, I think it's one of the things that really helped increase my damage here. We'll see at the end how much more damage I was able to do. Basically, you know, this was the next run after that previous video. There might have been one in the middle there, but in the first run with the Nightsisters, I did 1.4 million, and I did a lot more in this run. So, how do you effectively get plague to stick to the bosses using Mother Talzin? Well, the bosses themselves have that really high tenacity, so it's hard to apply plague directly to them. However, at the start of the battle, there are the two additional enemies, the Sith Assassin and the Sith Marauder, the ads, as I call them, and you can apply plague to them pretty easily. So, Mother Talzin's first move for the battle should be to use her plague attack, her first special, and you want to land at least one of the ads with plague, hopefully both, but if you get one, it's probably fine. If you don't get any plague and you want to maximize your run, then I suggest you retreat and come back in until you can get that to stick. So you do need a little bit of potency on Mother Talzin in order to get that to work. So also what that means is you don't want to eliminate, you don't want to nuke down those ads at the start of the fight. Sometimes it can be good to do that. Nightsisters thrive on enemies dying. That ramps up Asajj's damage. But early on here, until you get the plague train rolling, I would hold off on taking the ads out. So once you've applied plague, then you need it to spread. And how it spreads is through Mother Talzin's unique. At the start of each enemy's turn, if they have plague, they automatically apply it to another tomb. And that can't be resisted. So that's how you overcome the boss's tenacity. If you put it on an ad and it gets spread to a boss, they can't resist it through a tenacity check. So one of the tips is if you apply plague to one of the adds in the first move for Mother Talzin. Then take out the second add, the one that doesn't have plague, before the first one takes its first turn. Because on the plagued add's turn, they're going to apply plague randomly to another character. Well, you don't want it to go on that second add, so take it out. Now, this is for, again, non-heroic. The problem that I had is once plague is on these enemies, Mother Talzin eventually has to use her basic, and her basic damages all plagued enemies. So you're going to be damaging, the plague itself does damage, Mother Talzin's basic does damage, you're going to be damaging these adds, and at least in tier 6, the non-heroic tier, they don't have enough health to last very long. They were getting one turn, maybe, not really getting a second turn. So if in that one turn all you do is have the add spread plague from itself to the other add, they're probably both going to die before they can spread it to the boss. That was the problem I was having. Again, when we get to tier 7, they might be healthier, and it might make sense to have both adds get plague so they can pass it back and forth and then get it onto the bosses in multiples, and that might be a better strategy. But we'll see when we get there to the heroic raid. So, that pretty much wraps up Mother Talzin. You want to get the plague on one of the bosses, then you can kill both adds, and then the bosses will kind of pass it back and forth. The only way to get rid of plague, it does fall off after a number of turns, but they pass it back and forth on their turns, and they can't ever get themselves back to full health, so they won't ever cleanse the plague. So it's a nice way to supplement your damage. As long as you get the train rolling early, you can kind of sustain it throughout the fight. And if it does fall off, then make sure you save Talzin's special. Keep an eye on the cooldowns. Both Nihilus and Sion can summon the adds, and if Talzin has her special ready, and one of the bosses is going to summon on their next turn, then hold off on using her special until the adds come back up, apply the plague, and there you go, you'll start rolling again. The second thing I want to talk about is Zombie. I did get Zombie up to 6 stars. I think literally right before this run, I had 1 or 2 hard node sims left for Zombie, got my last shard to get Zombie to 6 stars, so I was able to use it for the first time in this raid. And it's a great combo with Asajj. Being able to use the taunt to soak up Annihilates without having to use Unbreakable Will is awesome. Using it to soak up Isolate, so that if that character dies, the zombie will still come back. If one of your other characters gets isolated, you need to cleanse them. With Zombie, though, that's not a problem. As long as the zombie takes the isolate, even if it gets killed, it's going to come back. So Zombie is great from a replayability. You don't have to worry about getting unlucky. Quick dying. I have my Zombie extremely low gear, and it's probably too low. I think I'll find this out in hard mode. I think the sweet spot is maybe gear 6 or 7, and the reason for that is mostly for Nihilus. The idea is going into Nihilus's Annihilate turn, you want to make sure you have Taunt up on your Zombie. But there's going to be some times where Nihilus is going to have Annihilate on a 1-turn cooldown, and he's going to have his basic as his first attack. If you don't know how Nihilus works, feel free to check out some of the other videos on my channel. I go through step-by-step analysis on how to predict Nihilus's attacks accurately. So if you know that Nihilus's first attack is going to be Drain Force, and his Annihilate is on a cooldown that's low enough that it will be reduced by Drain Force enough to activate Annihilate on his second attack, then if he attacks Zombie or kills Zombie, which will still allow it to revive but it won't have the taunt, then Nihilus will have his Annihilate ready, and he'll get to pick a random target because Zombie lost the taunt when it died. So having enough health to take a Drain Force hit and still be on its feet to keep the taunt up to then soak up the Annihilate, I think is going to be the sweet spot. And again, it'll be a little bit of testing once I get to tier 7, but I am going to try and keep Zombie as low gear as possible. I want my Zombie useful in territory wars and other aspects of the game, so I want it to die frequently, but I still want it to be useful here. So we'll see what that sweet spot is. I'm thinking it's going to be gear 6 or 7. We need to get it to 7 stars. I'm a little bit away from that, so it's not going to be early that I get to figure that out. And we also need to reach the minimum power requirement for territory wars to use that character. So something to keep an eye on, something to consider. But as you can see here, Nightsister Zombie dies all the time, and it just feeds offense to Asajj, and it just makes the whole run a whole lot better. So Zombie is a great character. I've been grinding zombie since the hard node has been activated. We recently got the increase from 5 sims a day or 5 attacks a day on a node to 8. It's amazing. It's said to be limited time, so get it while you can. Get after those hard nodes. 8 sims a day is pretty great. So now we're going to move on to just a couple of final basic tips here. Bounce your attacks, and what I mean by that is usually when you go into phase 4.1, when all 3 bosses are up, the goal is to get Nihilus down first as quickly as possible. He's the more dangerous enemy. With just Sion, you get Unbreakable Will, you get Stacks of Pain, so you kind of do more damage and do more things when Nihilus is out of the way. But the end to your run is going to be enrage. And either of the bosses, Sion or Nihilus enraging, is going to bring your run to a quick end. So you don't really want to get one of them to enrage while the other one is still on 4-turn cooldown before they enrage. So Nihilus is the primary target. Hit him with your big hits, but small hits from Daka. If you don't want to use Daka's heal or Daka's heal's on a cooldown, and you're going to fire off a basic, the damage is going to be really low. It's not going to do much to Nihilus in terms of damage and helping your team, but every time you hit Nihilus, he gains a ton of speed. I think it's 35 speed, whereas Sion just gains a percentage of turn meter. I think it's only 5% turn meter. So hits on Nihilus ramp his speed up, and he'll go faster and faster and faster, and he could be at enrage, and Sion is still at a 4-turn cooldown before enrage. So you want to avoid that. So think about who you're attacking. Obviously, if you have the defense down debuff, then it might be worth switching an attack to Sion. If you have a weak attack, it might be doing the attack on Sion. If you have Daka up, again, her attack is very weak, so maybe it makes sense to use her heal. Even if you don't really need it, it's still going to generate some turn meter, and it's going to slow down the acceleration, the speed of the bosses. Remember, the only characters doing damage here, it's mostly Asajj, and then a little bit from Acolyte when she does her chain attacks. So keep in mind of what you're accomplishing with your attacks. How valuable is the bit of damage that you're going to do compared to what it's costing you in terms of turn meter that you're feeding to the bosses. So for me, make sure that your enrage cooldowns are kept relatively even. Big hits on Nihilus, big specials whenever you can on both is fine, and be aware of the defense down debuff. Using an attack on Nihilus, a basic, when you have the defense down, can feed him some protection, which again just nullifies your damage a little bit. So that's going to be it. I'm going to let the rest of the video play through here, and you can see at the end of the run we put up 2.2 million damage, another 800,000 on top of my first run. Again, with the Zeta for Asajj on her rampage, I think that was a big part of it. Playing smart. Plague inflicted almost throughout the entire fight, did a big chunk of damage as well, and using Nightsister Zombie to soak up some hits and survive a little bit into the enrage, all worked out to our benefit. Great run. This team makes the Sith Raid fun for me. I don't really enjoy, throwing my undergeared Phoenix or my gear 9 troopers at it. They feel like they're not doing anything, they're not making progress, but the Nightsisters, they're fun to play. They feel like they get the mechanics. They were meant to do this, and it's kind of a fun little puzzle to figure out how to attack this phase, attack this raid, and really do something to it. So I've heard Jedi training raid teams can do that as well. I did just finish my veteran smugglers, so they are ready to go. So please, it's May the 4th tomorrow. I was hoping Jedi Raid was coming back. It doesn't look like that's the case unless there's a surprise tomorrow. It's going to be Bosk instead. But I am ready for Jedi Training Raid, so I will have a couple of teams to send at that heroic raid. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you're looking for something in particular in the heroic, you can leave a comment, and I'll try to address it as best I can once we start the heroic raids. But either way, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.